Hello everyone, and welcome to the webinar supporting the teacher well-being, key for prevention of teacher burnout and dropout from the profession. My name is Ivana Pikić from the Network of Education Policy Centers, and I will be your host today. This webinar is one of the activities implemented within the project called Hand in Hand, empowering teachers across Europe to deal with social, emotional, and diversity-related career challenges. This project is focused on teachers and supporting the development of teachers' social and emotional competencies, as well as their diversity awareness, all in order to empower them for the complexity of everyday working life with increasingly diverse classrooms, and to enable them to deal flexibly with the new challenges. More information about the project is available at the official project webpage. You can see the link to the webpage in the chat. And as our topic today is connected with the teacher well-being, we have here with us today representatives from the Institute for Social Research in Zagreb, from the Center for Educational Research and Development. They are our partner organization exploring the core concepts within the project. Here with us today are Iris Marušić, a scientific advisor with the PhD from the Department of Psychology, Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, University of Zagreb, and her field of research are educational psychology, personality psychology, and cross-cultural psychology. Welcome, Iris. Also, we have here with us today Jelena Matić Bojić, our research associate with PhD also in psychology from the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, University of Zagreb. Her area of interest are personality, social psychology, and educational psychology. Welcome, Jelena. And Ivana Pikić Jugović, a senior research associate, also with a PhD from the Department of Psychology at the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, University of Zagreb. And her areas of interest are educational psychology and psychology of gender. Welcome, Ivana, and thank you for accepting our invitation to join us today. Our lecturers will present us with the theoretical and empirical overview of the topic teacher well-being, enriched with the examples from their experiences working with as a trainers within the HAND project, and also put special emphasis on the well-being of the early career teachers. Thank you all participants as well for joining us. I kindly ask you to keep your microphones turned off during the lecture. You can write in the chat, and of course after the lecture we will have some time for your questions and comments. Iris, Jelena, and Ivana, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eva, for the introduction. I'm the first one in today's trio, so I'm going to start a little bit with the theory and the definition of well-being and why do we do research and practice on this. Teacher well-being has become a major theme in both teacher research and teacher policy in the last couple of years, and this interest is visibly rising. And the focus, when we talk about teacher well-being, then we usually refer to teacher occupational well-being, so well-being related to their job and related to their sense of meaning and satisfaction with the job they do. Literature usually defines work-related well-being as individuals' positive evaluations and healthy functioning in their work environment. And for teachers, this well-being is very important for them, for their quality of teaching and for their career plans, but it's also important for their students, for their pupils, because teachers who are well and who feel well at their work, they will be able to establish good and quality relations with their pupils. And they will be able to support their pupils in their learning. They will be better in classroom management. And this is reflected in the well-being and academic success of pupils. So the line of research supports and provides evidence for this connection between teachers' well-being and success, educational success of their pupils. When we talk about this increasing interest for teacher well-being, it's also reflected in policy documents and in policy research on European level, but also international in the last couple of years. And we can see why it is important at EU level in European Union. About 50% of teachers report that they are stressed at work, that they experience quite a bit or a lot of stress at work. This is in line with what we already know, that teaching is among the most stressful occupations and professions that there are, and that stress is a common companion of teachers functioning at work. On the other hand, the perception of the teacher status is quite low, especially in some countries. So when we look at international level, only one teacher out of 4 believes that teaching is a profession that is valued in society. For Croatia, for the context where we are working, it's only about 10%. So if you're stressed at work and you don't perceive that your job is valued in society, then of course, this is not very good for your overall well-being and for your occupational well-being. This means that if you experience a lot of stress and burnout, you will start to think about leaving the profession. So teachers who experience a lot of stress at work, they are the ones who just reconsider their career plans and career options, and they are more likely to report the intention to leave the profession. And European Commission in their document about 2 years ago recognized the importance of well-being and supporting well-being for the enhancement of the attractiveness of teacher profession in Europe. So how do we know that our teachers are well or unwell? First, we should know how they feel in their profession and at work. What are their levels of stress and burnout? Whether they are satisfied with their job, whether they express enthusiasm for their teaching, and whether they plan to stay in their profession, or they reconsider staying and consider switching the career for something that would be less stressful and maybe more rewarding. Also, it is reflected in what they do in the classroom. It's reflected in their instructional practices or quality of their teaching. It's reflected in their classroom management, relations with their pupils, and pupil achievement and motivation and well-being. So pupils can also inform us and tell us how are their teachers from what they see in the classroom every day. When we talk a little bit more about the theory, we have 3 key areas of influences on teacher well-being. First, this is this systemic policy level, policy context, referring to material conditions, to salaries, to career structure and opportunities for career advancement in teaching, and also job security. Then this is the lower level, it's school context. What is the quality of the school context in which I'm working? What is the quality of leadership in school? What is collegial support? How are my relations with my colleagues? Do I receive support? How about my work autonomy, professional and training opportunities that are provided for me in the school? Also a physical learning environment, so conditions in which I work are also a determinant of well-being, and also classroom composition, pupil behavior or misbehavior, and the workload, meaning all the administrative duties that always and quite often overwhelm our teachers. And the third group of factors influencing are the teacher characteristics like age, gender, their professional experience, professional qualifications. Then motivation for the profession, self-efficacy, personality, their social and emotional competences. So the research on all these characteristics is on the rise. And especially during the last 2 years that are marked by a pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. So the issues of teacher well-being, teacher burnout, and teacher stress have become very, very prominent in the literature. So maybe you have also had the opportunity to see some of the papers or research on this. When we work on this topic in the Institute, our focus is particularly on the early career teachers, those up to 5 years in the profession, because the evidence shows that this transition from teacher studies into everyday teaching in school is very challenging for young teachers. They are usually overwhelmed by various tasks, from classroom management, from fulfilling demands of school leadership. They're facing increasing parental involvement, sometimes even pressure from parents. They have to fulfill administrative demands, and this can be very overwhelming for them in those early years. So these early years are always critical for their decisions about their professional future. Stress and burnout can lead them to reconsider their choice of teaching as a long-term career and eventually leave the profession. That's why these critical early years are those years in which they should be supported somehow and supported in their decision to choose teaching as a long-term professional choice. Research is, of course, in this area important for both policy and practice. So I'm going just to show you one example of the research that we are doing now in the Institute, the research project that we are implementing. And this is the whole model that we have developed to assess the influence of individual characteristics like a teacher's personality, their motivation, social and emotional competences, the relation with their occupational well-being that is reflected in enthusiasm for teaching, in their job satisfaction, career plans, but also in the levels of burnout that we are going to elaborate a little bit more in the next section of this presentation. And we also included a pupil perspective on teachers' well-being. As I previously said, it's very important because how teachers feel is reflected in what they do in the classroom, and this is reflected in the perception of their pupils. So we also included the pupils' voice on the relations with their teachers, teacher support for learning, and on practices of classroom management. So I think that we are ready for the next section of our today's webinar.
Thank you, Iris. And as Iris said, I will follow up with a little bit more details on burnout, which is, as you can see from this model, just one of the indicators of teachers' well-being. So I believe most of you are very familiar with the concept, but in these first few slides, I will just remind you of the concept as defined by Maslach, which is one of the most familiar authors in this field. She defines burnout as a work-related psychological syndrome. So when I say syndrome, I mean a combination of various symptoms that can be put under the umbrella of three concepts, which are emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and inefficacy or reduced accomplishment. I will tell you a bit more about what these three refer to in the next slides. But what is important so far is that burnout is most usually seen in caregiving and service occupations. This, of course, doesn't mean that it cannot happen in other occupations, but here in these caregiving occupations, which are characterized by a lot of work with other people, it's just most common. One of these occupations is, of course, teaching occupation. So teacher burnout is a very familiar phenomenon, and it's highly researched in past few decades. It's an extreme form of a chronic stress that can happen to any teacher, regardless of their experience, age, enthusiasm for teaching. And there are, of course, different numbers, but about every third or even more often, every third teacher feels a burnout throughout their career or in some phase of their career. As you can see, this is from a paper which was published about a decade ago. So you can assume that with COVID and everything that happened in a teaching profession in past 3 years, these numbers can probably be higher now. So it goes up to every second or third teacher feeling burnout throughout their career. So let's go back to how the teacher burnout can be measured and what are the dimensions that are actually covered with this concept. These are, as I said, emotional exhaustion, loss of empathy or depersonalization, and a reduced personal accomplishment as dimensions on the higher level in this scheme. When I say emotional exhaustion, I mean on state of being depleted on one's own emotional resources. And a sample item for this would be, I feel emotionally drained from my work. So teachers who believe this to happen quite often can be said to feel emotional exhaustion in their work. Then there is this loss of empathy, which is characterized by the cynical and negative approach to people who are subject to care. So in teachers, these would be students, but also other people who are in contact with teachers, so their colleagues, parents, and everyone else in the school, and it can be measured by a sample item. I don't really care what happens with some of my students. And there is this third dimension that is covered by the burnout syndrome, which is reduced personal accomplishment, or a feeling that a person is low in self-efficacy and has negative feelings towards oneself, and feelings that no accomplishment has been achieved pastly for a person in a teaching profession. This dimension can be measured by a sample item. I haven't accomplished worthwhile things in this job. With Maslach approach, these sample items are rated on a frequency scale, such as the one in the lowest square that you can see. But of course, there are other more contemporary scales. For example, in the project that Iris mentioned, we are using the BAT scale, burnout assessment tool. Yeah. However, Maslach scale is still the most important one and probably the most used, and it's very useful for the comparative studies because of its a wide use. So the reason why teacher burnout is important is because it has a lot of consequences on both a personal and systemic level. You can draw a parallel here with what Iris said previously about well-being in general. There are a lot of consequences of burnout on personal level, such as low job satisfaction, which is followed by unpleasant emotions such as resentment, frustration, irritability, anger, helplessness, boredom. These all can lead to withdrawal reactions at work. So teachers just withdrawing from their obligations and from investing more effort in their work. Also, it can lead to some mental but also physical health problems in teachers, and it can certainly affect their work-life balance and decrease the quality of their personal life. On a systemic level, and a level that is somehow not more important, but let's say more worrying to educational systems and school leaders, is this a problem of teachers absenteeism, teacher attrition, and early retirement, which all, as you can assume, lead to actually hardship in being able to offer the education for all, with staff feeling burnout. There are certain risk factors for burnout. We covered them here in large by saying that four factors can lead to burnout. First, that's an imbalance between job demands and job skills. So if a person feels that the job skills are not high enough or good enough to meet the job demands, there is this mismatch which causes a burnout and the feeling of lack of personal accomplishment, emotional exhaustion, and other symptoms that are covered by burnout. Also, the lack of job control. So when the control is out of teachers' hands, let's say, it's something that leads to more burnout. Imbalance between effort and reward is also something that makes burnout more intensive, and that's something that you can assume is very present due to, let's say, how to say it, poor recognition of teachers' work in terms of their salaries and other rewards that can be given to them. And also prolonged work stress. So acute stress is something that is normal for teachers to feel, but when it's happening all the time without the ability to kind of reset, it also leads to burnout in teacher profession. There are certain individual factors, but also contextual factors that make burnout more pervasive. So about age, there are quite inconsistent findings. So as I said earlier, both experienced and less experienced teacher can feel burnout, probably because of different reasons. Then, according to gender, certain dimensions are more frequent in female teachers and certain in male teachers. So for female teachers, it's characteristics that they feel higher levels of emotional exhaustion, that first dimension of burnout that I presented. And for male teachers, the other two dimensions are more often than for females. These are the loss of empathy and inefficacy or feeling of reduced accomplishment. Also, some personality traits are predictive of burnout, such as low emotional stability from the big 5 factors, low self-esteem, locus of control, which is not internal but external, coping styles that are passive and defensive, and high idealism for work. So the need to accomplish everything to be perfect and ideal. When we talk about organizational and contextual factors that are sources of burnout, there are different factors that are recognized by research. Some of them were already mentioned in Iris' presentation, because they are affecting not only burnout, but well-being of teachers in general. So these are excessive work demands, inadequate salary, poor work conditions, being, let's say, overcrowded classrooms, lack of resources. Then their lack of participation in school decision making, which is reflected in this external locus of control that teachers sometimes can feel. Also, what is contributing to burnout is lack of support from colleagues and school leaders, and lack of school belonging and sense of community in school. For teachers, student misbehaviors, disrespect, and lack of attention devoted by students. Student and family apathy, so showing less interest in learning than expected by teachers, and systemic policy level factors can also contribute to teachers' burnout. In the next section, we will focus on how teacher burnout can be prevented, and what are some things that can be used in order to achieve that. So I will invite Ivana to tell you something about it.
Thank you, Jelena. So now we will focus on what can actually be done to prevent burnout and to enhance well-being in teachers. From the vast area of research, we know that there are two types of interventions that can be done to prevent burnout. And I'm talking about research not only on teachers, but in general, in different kinds of occupations. And those are usually person-directed interventions and organization-directed interventions. But what we also thought that it is important when we think about teachers is system-directed interventions, because it is the whole educational system that also causes stress that is specific to this profession. So I will talk about these three kinds of interventions. First, person-directed interventions are usually cognitive and behavioral measures aimed at enhancing job competence of, for example, teachers or other workers. Also enhancing personal coping skills. When stress happens, when something negative happens, it is important to know what coping skill to use, what are coping skills more efficient. Is it more emotional focused coping skills, or maybe problem solving skills, and so on. Also seeking social support or different kinds of relaxation exercises. The second part are organization-directed interventions, and they usually involve changes in working procedures, like task restructuring or decreasing job demands, because burnout usually happens when job demands are too high to be able to fulfill what is actually expected. So, and when that is lasting for some longer time. Also increasing job control and participation in decision making. All of these interventions have the same goal: to empower individuals and also to reduce their experience of stressors. And when we think about system-directed interventions, it is important to have in mind that teachers actually usually feel also stress because of different types of changes at the educational system level. like the accountability policies where teachers feel that they are responsible for pupils' achievements and so on, which also brings them stress. So what is important is that educational policies and changes are happening first in initial teacher education, so at the pre-service level, but also in service level, so that trainings and teacher education also involves and focuses on teacher well-being and on their social and emotional competencies. So the question is, how useful are actually these interventions, these burnout intervention programs? A meta-analysis showed that burnout intervention programs are beneficial because individuals who take part in those programs actually experience less burnout and have better mental health than their colleagues who did not participate in those kinds of programs. Also, what has been shown is that intervention programs that combine person and organization-directed prevention measures are the most efficient. So when thinking about teachers and schools, the whole school approach would be the most suitable, where interventions are all focused on teachers themselves, but also the whole school and how the procedures in schools are organized and so on. And in addition, positive effects can also be enhanced by refresher courses at appropriate intervals after the end of the program. So some follow-up is also beneficial. And now we move to the more practical part of this webinar. We move to guidelines on burnout prevention, starting with individual level. I would just like to stress something that also Jelena said when defining burnout. Burnout is a phenomena that is work-related. So although we will talk about guidelines on individual level, it is very important to know that when people feel burnout, that is due to the mismatch between maybe individual resources and that working environment. So usually when a person goes to a holiday, burnout decreases, or when the teacher changes schools, burnout decreases. So it is important to know that it is not, that is something work-related. But although we can also do something to help ourselves when we feel stress and when there's too much going on work. So these are some things that we can do. First, find balance between job and rest. It's of course easier said than done, but what is important is that stressors happen all the time. Stress happens all the time, but it's not, the burnout doesn't happen when one stressful situation happens, when stress is acute, because we always have some kinds of, we have some deadlines from time to time. But when that happens all the time, and when stress is chronic, then there is a possibility of burnout. So it is important to find that balance between job, between our workload and so on, and rest. So it is important to rest during weekends, go to the nature or do something, or at least have some awareness of how tired are we, how stressed we are, and that we do something about it. The second thing is to improve preventive coping strategies. And to be aware of what strategies actually work for us, and which strategies help us. When we did interviews with teachers, early career teachers, in the project that ISRZ introduced at the beginning, we only have some anecdotal it's not findings, but our impressions, because teachers said that some strategies are working for them, like talking to their colleagues or to their friends, venting out when they have problems, or riding a bike just to, you know, also feel less stressed, or so on. Some are more task oriented and like to do, you know, problem solving and so on. So it is important to know what works for us and to have different kinds of strategies on our disposal. Seeking social support, like support from other colleagues, from our friends, family, and so on, is also important. Practicing relaxation techniques. Research show actually that mindfulness meditation or yoga exercises do enhance well-being and reduce the chance of burnout. And in our hand-in-hand program, this is something that we actually do. We practice mindfulness and like gentle physical exercises in order to also enhance well-being of teachers. Increasing self-awareness. When we know what we are feeling, what stresses us the most, and how our emotions are influencing our behavior, it is easier also to you know, have better mental health, and to know what to do when we are feeling really stressed. And like a general recommendation, investing in health, in better nutrition and exercises. Guidelines on working conditions related prevention of burnout are the following. Having a sustainable workload. This is something that should be organized at the organizational top level. The other one is having a sense of control and the possibility of choice. When teachers have the feeling that they control what they do with their pupils, when they have choice on how they will perform some lessons, or when they have choice of professional training and so on, then they feel more satisfied at their work. Recognition and rewards are also important. Sometimes, of course, financial rewards are important, but when they are not possible, then it is important to recognize somebody's increased effort, because that also is important in reducing stress. Supportive working community is important. That teachers have, for example, time to talk to each other, that they can have some time for themselves, or a place in school where they can meet and maybe exchange ideas or reflect on their day, when they can actually ask for advice their colleagues or supervisors, and so on. This is something that also decreases the possibility of burnout. Perception of fairness is important, that everybody has the same possibilities of, I don't know, working on an interesting project and so on. And clear values and meaningful work, because when we feel that our values are similar to the organization values, and then we feel also that we belong and feel better at work. And guidelines on systemic level. For example, educational policy creators could analyze their policies on the accountability of teachers, as I said before, and how this contributes to teachers' workload, pressure, and lower level of well-being, and also to focus on policies that enhance teachers' social and emotional competencies, and that also enable them to develop collaborative cultures within schools and the sense of community, and also to improve self-confidence in their professional relations with peers and students. And that is something that is also recommended on the European union level. So these things come also into educational policies, and hopefully will other countries will follow at their national levels. And to conclude, as we could see, teacher burnout can be reduced and well-being enhanced. And if educational authorities and school leaders want actually their teachers to be well and to thrive, they have to focus on teacher well-being and on creating healthy and supporting working environments. And more has to be done for that support to be available for everybody, not just for teachers who usually maybe choose those kinds of professional development, but also for all teachers. So it has to be implemented also from in-service, from pre-service to in-service teacher education. And I think that yes, we have come to the end of the presentation. We have some more time, maybe 10 minutes for your reflections or maybe your questions. And I will give floor to Eva if you want to moderate this part of.
Thank you. Thank you for this great and really informative presentation. I think that we all got the opportunity to think about and reflect about this topic from our own perspective. From the participants list and registrations, I am aware that here are many of us in different roles, from being teachers, being researchers. So I thank you once again, and I am opening the floor to you, participants, to share your thoughts, comments, maybe if you have some questions to further deepen some of the findings our lecturers shared with us today. Feel free to either raise your hand, ask in chat, or just unmute yourself and share your thoughts. Okay, we have a question in the chat from Christina. She thanks you very much and wants to know more about the project and if we have any insight into the situation of vocational education and training teacher. Are there differences, other needs, and recommendation transferable one-to-one?
Maybe we'll just open the chat to have a question in front of us as well, if it's fine. Okay, I can answer on this part about the project. So CanDT is a project that is focused on empowering teachers, but not only teachers, but also their principals and school counselors from their schools in developing social and emotional competencies as conceptualized by the Cassell model, if you are familiar with it. Which means we are with them, we are doing different exercises that are aimed at developing their self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social relations, and responsible decision-making. And we are also working with them on developing their diversity awareness. And as Ivana earlier said, this is a very hands-on project in a way that we meet with our teachers regularly in 5 countries in which field trial is happening. And these are Croatia, Slovenia, Sweden, Portugal, and Austria. And with our teachers, we meet basically throughout the whole school year. And we do exercises that are based on dialogues with their colleagues. So we're trying to enhance this social support part. We're doing a lot of self-reflection exercises. We're also discussing different diversity related issues. So far, we are already in a second half of the project. So there is quite a lot of work behind us already, and it is really fulfilling for us. And I'd say the response from the teachers is also very, very good. But what Ivana said is we were, at least in Croatia, where we act as trainers, we were quite lucky to get very motivated teachers. So teachers who already recognize and invest a lot of their free time and time devoted to their CPD in these topics. There are still a lot of teachers that decided not to participate and that are not involved. So besides offering this project and similar projects, we would really love to see something happening at the systemic level that can cover also those who are not that willing to involve in the project if it's not mandatory and if it's not that everyone else is included from the school. And I think we think these projects would be really, really beneficial also for those who are not that keen to participate in similar projects. About the vocational, yeah, let's see the other part of the questions.
Vocational education training teachers.
Uh-huh.
Well, we don't have any particular insights in this project hand in hand because we are working with the elementary school teachers. But we did some research on teachers' experiences during COVID-19 pandemics in Croatia on various school levels. And when we tried to assess whether there were differences regarding school level or school type in upper secondary education, we did not get any, significant differences in their experiences of the level of stress and burnout. I think that when there were some differences, they were in favor of VET teachers. Can you remember? Because I think that they felt a little bit less stressed than upper secondary gymnasium teachers. But of course, each school context is very unique. So if you talk about different needs, the needs in a particular school context can be different, but the recommendations for the support are pretty general, or recommendations for the prevention of burnout, these are pretty general across the various contexts, school contexts. If this answers your question or concern.
Thank you. We have another question here from Anastasia, who would like to know how to convince school management to care about teachers' well-being. Is it also important to care about management's well-being? So I think this is a really interesting question.
Well, when we started with this project, we also, and the first hand in hand, because this is the follow-up of the first project, we also included the management of the schools. And it is important, for example, when you have a project like this and have teachers involved, to also include management so they know what actually happens to their teachers. And because any change that happens in teachers won't be that sustainable if the management doesn't understand what actually is happening and what is important. So we have also workshops with them together, so with school leaders, head of the school, and with school counselors. together where they discuss about issues at schools and how they can be solved, and where they are also introduced with research on teachers' well-being and how it can be supported and what their role can also be.
If I can add, because in Croatia, I'm one of the leaders of the group for school principals and school counselors in this CanDT project. I would say in this project, which started after the Corona crisis, we actually didn't have hard work in making school leaders believe that this project is important for them. They were well aware that well-being of teachers and everyone else in the school is number one topic that they need to devote their attention and time to. So we didn't have any trouble in making them believe, in persuading them, or whatever. They, in Croatia at least, they were so happy to hear that something like this is offered. And most of them, from most of the schools with which we work, a really big school leader team joined the project as well. So besides principals, we have school psychologists, speech therapists, pedagogues, and other expert staff involved. And this is something that also motivates their teachers if they know that their participation is makes sense, because the school leaders are also participants in the same project. So we think this is a really big motivation factor for teachers to join if their school leaders join as well.
Thank you for your answer. I would just like to ask, while we are still waiting for other comments and maybe questions, do you think that COVID maybe helped the school management, as Anastasia mentioned, to recognize the importance of socio-emotional competences and well-being in general, maybe?
Well, I think that maybe yes. Well, maybe this is a temporary effect, but I think that the awareness about the importance of teacher well-being and well-being of everyone in schools is very, very important for the overall school functioning and even for their pupils. So I think that this effect can be seen. And it's seen in the amount of research on the topic that has been published in the last 2 years. So I hope that this effect will become a long-term effect, that when we have efficient tools of supporting school communities and their well-being, then they will be more resilient in facing maybe some upcoming crises that can always be expected, and that it's something that should be taken care of on a regular basis, not only in the circumstances that are extraordinary and exceptional.
Thank you. Do we maybe have some other questions or comments? If not, then I would like to thank you once again for this great presentation and overview of this, as we saw, important topic, teachers' well-being. We are glad to hear that there are many. Okay, we have another question. Are there any institutionalized forms of teacher support in Croatian schools?
What is this? Well, I don't know what do you refer by
Obviously not.
institutionalized
Yeah,
form of
obviously
teacher
not, because
support.
we don't
I
know what would it be.
Yeah, they have their professional development in Croatia, but it's if that's your question, it's mainly focused on their pedagogical competences and their methodics and their skills of teaching, instructional skills. But they're less focused on some other types of skills that they need for being a good and well-supported teacher.
Thank you. We have another one. What do you do after the intervention? Do you follow up later with these schools if the practices are sustainable, ongoing, and how do you plan making them sustainable?
I can answer on this. Well, what we didn't say here is that we have evaluation going on together with the intervention. So we have experimental and controlled schools, and we have pre and post tests. So we'll see if there are some changes in teachers from the experimental schools who participated in the program, of course. And then later on, we will also have some, after the evaluation phase, we will also have some short intervention for the control schools, just to thank them for their effort in helping us conduct the research part. About the sustainability part of the question, we are already in the last year of the project. So within the course of the project, there won't be so many chances to follow up with schools. But as here at the Institute for Social Research, and in most of the countries, it's also like that. We actually have an ongoing partnership with a lot of schools and that are involved in the project as well. And we will certainly, if not formally, we will anecdotally hear about how this made effect in their schools. And there is also a stream where the ministries of 3 countries are involved, where we will do some effort in trying to make this live also after the project and do some change on a systemic level, but it's something that is still, we have to see how it will develop. All the resources will be available and open, and we hope to be able to somehow offer the program to live even after the 3 years of the project life are expired. But this is all up to to see what the future will bring.
Thank you, Jelena. We have the elaboration of the previous question about the institutionalized forms of support. It was elaborated that it is understood as a time and place inside the teacher's schedule, so they could take care of themselves or talk about their problems with colleagues.
Not particularly. When we had workshops with teachers, they said that those workshops were really important for them because they've seen how they could actually support each other just by talking in groups or hearing each other out and so on. Because usually they don't have enough time, even during the breaks in the school. They have, it's just 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes and not enough to actually give each other support for that. And something else, like on a systemic level, is also not provided, like supervision or some other kind of help is not available yet.
Thank you. Sanja, you would like to add something?
Yes, I wanted to add that if you mean how many hours, working hours with children teachers have per week, in Croatia, it is about 24 hours in the classroom. So when we compare with some other countries, actually we do have a time to have a meetings with our colleagues, also to work something on ourselves, on our well-being and so on. But what is also the fact that it is not, how to say, it is not organized in that way. So what is maybe needed is to, how to say, to transport the idea, how we plan, how we, and what we do in those hours when we are not with children. In some cases, teachers even believes that they have just those hours, working hours, when they are with how to say, with children. Even, of course, they are paid for 14 something hours per week. So I think it is what we need is kind of transformation, what is needed for the teachers to be better for their own well-being, but also for children's well-being.
Thank you, Sanja. Thank you once again to our lecturers. As I'm joining the comments, I'm also glad we are talking about this topic and hoping for change on the systematic levels. And as Sanja, you nicely put it, the teacher's well-being is also important because of the children and their well-being. So thank you also for joining this webinar, and hopefully you will have the opportunity to take something from what you learned today and try to advocate for it in your practices. So with this being said, once again, thank you everybody, and looking forward to maybe seeing you again when we discuss this important topic, perhaps from some different angle. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Bye. Bye.